how, you know, it played a role of inspiration to create this event. So I moved from Mexico 4 years ago, and moving to the Bay Area or to any part or any new country, it can be tough sometimes. Not only adapting to a new cultural atmosphere, but also trying to belong somewhere. So it's very nice to have resources available where you can, feel more comfortable and be able to meet people. So we hope that this event not only can benefit you from the available resources, but also can help to connect you with other people from the community and city allies. If you have any question, you can drop them in the chat box below, and just remember to mute yourself as well, please. And at the end, stay tuned for the breakout rooms and connect. So we're gonna give the presentation to our first speaker and activity, guided by Victoria Novikova. She's from the Mindfulness group at LinkedIn. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful intro. Very excited to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Victoria Novikova. I am a product marketing manager by day at LinkedIn, but a life coach focused on mindfulness and different somatic healing modalities by night. I also lead a lot of mindfulness workshops at LinkedIn, as well as other nonprofits beyond. So very grateful for a chance to be here tonight. So I think what we would kick off is just some lightweight intro to meditation, mindfulness, especially during, difficult times in the world over the last several years, but really tools that can be used at any time, anywhere. And the lens through which I looked at meditation for the purposes of this event specifically was really focusing on how can it serve different parts of the family, parents, children, and the community alike. So all of these slides are also intended to be very kid-friendly in case you want to share any of these resources with your kids as you see fit, and sit down and try some of the videos or exercises as well. So let's first start with, what is meditation? There's a few different definitions, and it really is about calming the mind and the body in order to find stillness and be radically present in the moment that you're in. And so there's a lot of great benefits of meditation and different ways to meditate and achieve that state of being in the present moment. So a few benefits to unpack these. It makes us more calm. So really reduces that anxious, jittery feeling and helps us ground. It improves sleep. And so especially for kids who might struggle sleeping through the night, it again helps soothe the nervous system. It also helps us form greater resilience. So if there are challenging emotions or events that we encounter in life, then we have inner emotional resources to be that first line of defense that can help cope with those and emotionally self-regulate. And then the fourth benefit outlined here is really around stronger relationships. So this can be in the workplace, beyond the workplace, with your kids, with friends, with family. And this is really about showing up. Ooh, I think I'm hearing some. But this is really about this one's really about helping us form more resilient bonds, really moving away from transactional connections to feeling really deeply connected and safe with those who are around us. And then the fifth thing listed here is really around healthy habit forming. Again, this can be applicable to kids, adults alike. And so this is really about whether it's eating your vegetables or doing chores or getting physical movement in or healthier sleep patterns, things like that. So those are just a few things, but there is so much more the more you practice and the more you come back to it. So I wanted us to get a hands-on taste of what this is like. This is just a very basic intro to mindfulness and breathwork meditation. But there are many, many more, and I list some resources for the family holistically at the end of this as well. But let's find a comfortable seated position and try this out together. If you're feeling a little sleepy, you can also actually stand up, as long as maybe you're by a wall or have something to lean on. And I will invite you to get comfortable and now gently lower your gaze or close your eyes all the way. And now imagine a string coming out of the top of your head, pulling you up ever so gently towards the ceiling. And now relax the forehead, soften the cheeks, unhinge the jaw, and let your shoulders come down. And just taking your attention to your breath. And you can start to pay attention to your breath wherever it is most prominent. That might be the cool air coming into your nose on the inhale, or that might be the rising and the falling of the belly. And so just gently starting to pay attention to the natural ebbs and flows. And now let's do 3 deep breaths and releases to really get grounded and centered and come into the present moment, away from the workday and everything else going on. So let's all take a deep breath in and just sigh it out. And let's just do a couple more of those cleansing breaths. Deep inhale in. And exhale, let it go. And just one more. Inhale in. And exhale, release. And now just coming back to those natural ebbs and flows of the breath one more time. And just observing. Tracing the inhale all the way to the exhale. Just staying with your breath. And if your mind wanders away from the breath, just gently bring it back without judgment or story. Just gently come back and pay attention to your normal breathing. And if anything else arises in your body, whether it's emotions or thoughts, you can just imagine that they're like clouds passing in a blue sky, behind which is always the radiant, warm sunshine. And so you can say hello to those emotions or sensations. You can even simply note that you are thinking to yourself, or that you are feeling. And then simply come back to the breath. Just keep observing the inhale, the pause between the inhale and the exhale, and the pause between the next inhale, without trying to change it or control it. And now, letting go of all the doing and all the trying.
If you tie the knot,
Start to tune into the sounds around you.
Covered California helps you get health insurance when life changes.
Start to
and
wiggle
financial
your
help if you need
fingers
it.
and
Learn more at
toes.
coveredca.com. Time is limited.
Feel the weight of your body in the chair or couch. And whenever you're ready, just gently bring your awareness back into the room and let your eyes come open. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for taking that quick break to ground and center. And just remember that the breath, like all of our senses, is something that you can come back to at any moment to remind you that you are here, you are present, and that you can have the emotional capacity and resources to deal with whatever comes your way, just one breath at a time. And so I'll leave you with a few resources that you can either, again, share with your little ones or just dive into yourself. There are a couple of apps, of course, Calm and Headspace. They both have fantastic kids sections that have bedtime stories, as well as other meditative or mindful exercises. There's also a couple of YouTube channels that are really quite delightful as well, that I would highly recommend visiting, that really speak the language of children, that really are laced with so much deep care and emotional resonance. And then there's also other websites, checking out Deepak Chopra's Meditations for Kids or Green Child magazines. All wonderful resources, whether it's meditations you read or meditations you just play out loud, or just vocabulary to have a shared language around meditation and what it means to calm the mind and the body and why that's important. So that's all the content that I have for folks today. Thank you so much for this wonderful space, for being here, and may you all be healthy and happy and live with ease. And if you have any questions, feel free to just ping the chat. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back off.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was really nice. And it actually helped, I guess, not just myself, but everyone to set the mind to, receive the content of this event. Thank you again. So now we are gonna go to Callie. Callie is a co-founder of Real. It's a nonprofit based in Palo Alto, and she will explain more things that they are very interesting. Thank you, Callie.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Victoria. I really needed that for personally, and it's a great way to go into the presentation, and also such a great connection to neurodiverse children, because we actually just did a presentation recently for Google on meditation for the neurodiverse mind. And it's such an important tool for everyone, but especially for people who are neurodivergent. It can really help them focus their creativity and their energy and calm some anxiety. So I really appreciated having that space and that connection. And I also wanted to say, as I start my presentation, that I'm so excited to be here in general, but especially because this is actually Neurodiversity Celebration Week. So when the team told me they needed to reschedule, I thought, well, that's perfect, because it's part of our Neurodiversity Celebration Week that we're working on. And I'm actually going to put a link in the chat to Neurodiversity Celebration Week. They have so many resources on such a wide variety of neurodivergences. And I just think that will be really useful to everyone, because I can only scratch the surface tonight. So you can go on through to my second slide if you want. So as Jimena introduced, I'm Callie Turk. I'm co-founder of a nonprofit called REAL. We actually focus on what we call twice exceptional kids in Silicon Valley, and I'll explain that to you in just a minute. I'm also a doctoral student in the Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity in Education. So I'm also the mom of 3, and one of my children is neurodivergent. So I'm living it as a mom, I'm studying it as a student, and trying to help other families and our educators through our nonprofit. So because I mentioned twice exceptional, because that's the focus really of our nonprofit group, I want to just give you a quick definition of what that is. So twice exceptional students are actually it's a type of neurodivergence that kind of crosses across all the different conditions that are usually included in neurodivergence. It's sort of a specific type within neurodiversity, and just an example so that we have something we can talk about. Otherwise, neurodiversity is so big. We'd have a hard time covering it in just 20 minutes. And so I wanted to give you a few examples of kind of what it means to be neurodivergent. So a twice exceptional student is actually a student who has really distinguishing strengths, very high capability, and very complex challenges at the same time. So we like to think of these students as being green because they have both these yellow strengths or potential in one or more areas. They might be a great writer or really great at math, or have creativity, or be really good in sports, or have a lot of leadership potential, but they also have these very complicated blue challenges, which are things like specific learning disabilities. Those are like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. They might have ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder. They might just have general anxiety, be autistic. Really, there are 13 categories under the Individuals with Disability Education Act that all could qualify a child as having these kind of complex challenges. So about 5% of kids are 2E, about 1 in 5 kids have a neurodivergence. So we can go on to the next slide. And twice exceptionality is really part of the broader movement that we're seeing around diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. So when we look at that whole movement, and it's such an important movement, neurodiversity is actually part of that. And you can see more and more that companies and schools and organizations are really coming to understand that our neurodivergent fellow human beings on this planet, we have so much to offer, and we need to really find ways to help bring out the best in everyone so that we're all benefiting from one another as humans. And twice exceptionality is sort of a subset within neurodiversity. What we find, though, is that especially in a school setting, a child that has a special education need, if it is really clear and present, that need will usually be identified and addressed through a lot of the special education policies we have. But a child who is both very bright and also has one of these learning differences is more likely to fall through the cracks because they can be misdiagnosed or difficult to spot, and it can just be really hard to understand what's going on. But it's important to note that this can also be compounded further if the child is a person of color. And so in this case, we actually call these kids thrice exceptional because they are living at the intersection of race, learning difference, and high ability. So regardless of what the child's greater capability or individual struggle may be, we tend to see some similar struggles. And so if you have a child that is maybe having some of these struggles, it might be worth looking into seeing whether they have a learning difference. So one of the biggest things we see for kids who are bright and have a learning difference is they might be masking. So you might see that they are incredibly creative, or like really can memorize lots of facts, or they can't memorize any facts, but they can tell you stories forever and ever and ever. And then there's something about their behavior that is making it hard for other people to see all of that greatness. Or you may have a child who you know is really struggling, but everyone at school thinks is doing just fine. And so this is masking. A lot of times these kids' strengths and challenges kind of cover up each other so that you can't actually see what's really happening. Sometimes, especially with our dyslexic kids, we'll see a class clown. So you might see a child who, when they're asked to read out loud, or maybe give a presentation, or asked to do something in their weak area, they start making a lot of jokes. And it's kind of a way to distract from, the weakness that they're afraid to show. With our kids who are autistic, but also our kids who are ADHD, they can have a lot of sensory challenges, and these can be hidden. So sometimes you'll see a child who's having a meltdown, or who needs to run out of the room, or who can't stay in their seat. And a lot of times it might be because there's a sound that's bothering them, there's a texture that's bothering them, there's a smell. There are a lot of sensory challenges that can be bothering a person who's neurodivergent, and we don't know that until we really take the time to talk to them and understand what triggers they might have. Very often we'll see social challenges. These kids often feel that they are on the outskirts of things. They don't know how to get involved appropriately in the social dynamic, and that can lead to a lot of loneliness. Sometimes we see kids just be very resistant and in unusual ways, like maybe a child understands a math concept, but then won't do a worksheet that has like 12 or 14 or 20 problems on it. There's something maybe overwhelming about the amount of problems on a worksheet. We can especially see this with dyslexic kids. If there's a lot of information on a sheet, it can just be overwhelming, and they might start resisting doing the work. A lot of times with kids, especially twice exceptional kids, there's like this knowledge that they could do so much. You can see they have so much potential, but then they can't live up to it. Like they just can't perform like you think they should be able to. And that can a lot of times be from what's called asynchronous development. They've developed more in some capacities academically before others. And so we think that we have this impression that kids should be the same across everything. And that's just not the way it is. Kids can have these very jagged learning profiles, and this unexpected underperformance can be a sign that there's something they're struggling with that we don't understand yet. And all of these things can lead to anxiety. And anxiety is often the first thing that people see that really gets them to look at what's going on. Anxiety is a common experience across all kinds of neurodivergences, dyslexics, kids with ADHD, kids with autism. If I had to say there's like a common thread, there's anxiety is probably the biggest one. And it's often when we see it get to a level that it's debilitating, that's when parents or the school may step in and say, we need to figure out what's going on here. The sad thing is that if we don't figure these things out, the kids can become very disengaged, especially at school. They can start to think that school isn't worth it, and they can just decide they don't care anymore, and then we'll start to even see school refusal and dropping out. And it is thought that, the higher percentage of dropouts are neurodivergent than in the general population, because they've been trying so hard to make it work for so long, and they just get to the point where they say, I'm not doing it anymore. So those are some of the struggles that you might see that might be clues that you want to look further into what's going on with your kid. But on the flip side, there are some really interesting strengths. For instance, if you know a kid who makes connections across disciplines like Steve Jobs, or has great 3D spatial perspectives and thinking, I got those flipped, like Steven Spielberg, or really narrative reasoning. They can recall stories, episodes, and concepts like Octavia Butler. They might be dyslexic. Those are all like some very things that can be very strong strengths for dyslexics. If they're a creative out-of-the-box thinker like Dave Pilkey, who wrote the Captain Underpants series that kids love, or if you have that enthusiasm like Simone Biles does to stay really committed to something you love, or if you're a risk taker, you're very adventurous, you're curious, you love novelty, like Sir Richard Branson, then those might be strengths of ADHD. There's so many great things about people who have ADHD that we can really harness as a society, whether that's emergency room doctors, firefighters. There's so many ways that those strengths can really lead to such a productive and happy life. And then if you're someone who has like extreme knowledge, skill, passion, or motivation in something that you love or your interest area, like David Byrne and all the great, amazing art that he's created, or you really can focus in on details like Sir Anthony Hopkins and how he can really make a character come to life, or you're a very logical thinker and you're very honest and you're just committed to your cause like Greta Thunberg, those can be real strengths for autism, people who are autistic. So we want to make sure that we don't downplay the struggles, of course, that people that are neurodivergent have, but we also want to make sure we really concentrate on the strengths that they might bring and really nurture those strengths, because that's what's going to lead them to have the life that they envision for themselves. So we wanted to kind of focus in on another area of neurodivergence that's really easy to overlook. And this is about being neurodivergent and female. So just like it's easy to overlook neurodivergence in kids who are really bright, women and girls are often very overlooked for their neurodivergence. For instance, if you look at autism diagnoses, the ratio of male to female diagnoses is about 4-to-1. But most researchers are converging on the concept that the actual ratio is more like 3-to-1. But what you'll find if you look at the most early diagnosis, it is more close to 2-to-1, but it's only if they have severe intellectual challenges. So we only see that diagnosis of this autism as a neurodivergence in that early stage if the female has a severe intellectual challenge. And I just wanted to tell you really briefly the story of my own daughter, because this is how I became so passionate about looking at neurodivergence and especially looking at neurodivergent females. So my daughter, you can go to the next slide if you'd like, it was a very, very bright girl, but who had always had some social challenges. She'd always had a few little sensory things, but because she was reading when she was 3, writing stories when she was 5, able to do really advanced math when she was 8, she never got referred for anything else. She was ticking all the boxes academically, but she was struggling socially. In fact, she was struggling so much that in 2nd grade, she had probably picked about 100 spots all over her body from her anxiety. And no one really knew why. And no one connected the dots to say, this is a child who has hyperlexia. She actually was reading much earlier than was expected, which is also a sign of autism. She was very focused on her interests. She clearly had sensory challenges and social challenges. Because she was doing okay academically, no one ever referred her for services. It really wasn't until she was in 6th and 7th grades and she started having extreme meltdowns as part of going through puberty that her anxiety spiked so much into panic attacks that we were finally able to get a neuropsych eval for her to really understand what was going on. And she was diagnosed as autistic. And she's just one example of girls who get overlooked because if they don't have that intellectual disability at a young age, it's like they get ignored because they seem to sort of be following the path, even though some of the signs in retrospect are quite obvious. And this is actually can be true across ADHD and dyslexia and autism. In general, with girls, we can see this masking behavior that I talked about before is even more prevalent with girls. And the belief there is that girls are camouflaging and they're doing this artificial performance of social behavior, and they're hiding the behavior that they see as not being socially acceptable. And this is mostly because we believe, the research believes, of societal ways in which we expect girls to behave. And that they become more interested in sort of those social dynamics that a lot of times autistic boys are not as interested in. So this camouflaging means that we see fewer of the behavioral differences than we might see in young boys. And it also just presents more subtly. And this can lead out to heavy burnout, stress, anxiety, and panic attacks and trauma. We also see with girls more misdiagnosis. So a lot of times, you know, our presentation checklist that we have that's in our manuals that talk about these different neurodivergences are based on studies of boys and men. Most of these studies were conducted in the 20th century, primarily on boys and men, and we know that there is a research bias, and so there's a lack of awareness of what these things look like from a female perspective. In particular, with autism, we see a lot of girls being misdiagnosed with having an eating disorder. Because they can have sensory issues around food, they might be limiting what they're eating, and that can appear to be an eating disorder, or they could have an eating disorder related to anxiety, but the underlying factor is really autism. And so because of this, girls tend to miss out on a lot of the early intervention services. You know, all of these neurodivergences are better supported when we find out early. We can do more with children to help them learn the strategies that they need and to learn how to self-advocate the earlier that we are able to identify and start working with them. And, you know, the challenge here is just that all of this leads to a great deal of misunderstanding, anxiety, sensitivity, friendship difficulties, increased risk of harmful relationships, and even sexual abuse as they get older, because they don't have the knowledge and understanding of how to interact with other people. And so these are all just reasons why it's so important that we pay attention to our neurodivergent girls. And I know I'm about to run out of time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide other than to let you know that my organization has collected stories of teenagers, and one of them was a girl who was not identified as autistic until she was 18. And she emphasized the importance of knowing, and how that really gave her the confidence to know who she was so that she could make decisions based on what was best for her rather than what seemed normal to other people. And I think it's just such a powerful story of why it's important that we help identify these children earlier, because they can live better lives earlier and not have to go through the trauma of learning what they need. And so I will just quickly go on to the next slide, where I will say that no matter what you learn about your child and what their neurodivergence may be, there are three main things to think about. The first is, what kind of interventions could you put in place to help them, whether that's tutoring or medications or therapies. There are accommodations to consider. You can think about how to talk to your school or within your home. There are so many accommodations that you can ask for, that your child can learn about, so that they know how they will work best. Things like audiobooks, dictation tools, fidgets, if they might need more time on their assignments or tests, lighting and sound and seating considerations. There's just so many excellent accommodations that you can ask for. And then I really ask people, it is so easy to get tied up in intervention and accommodation and trying to kind of fix the problem. Please do not ignore your child's strengths. Every child has strengths, and that's really where they're going to find their joy and purpose in life. You will find that everyone wants to fix the child or focus on the deficits. But the more you can help them find their light, their motivation, and their passion, the more confidence they're going to have throughout their life. And there are a lot of resources in our community. If you go to the next slide, there's Children's Health Council in Palo Alto. Parents Helping Parents in San Jose has many free resources and free support groups to help parents, and really help parents who speak many different languages to navigate these systems. There's our organization, REAL. We really are supporting parents and educators. And then I am so excited that I am joined on this panel by my colleague here from Christy, who is from the Community Health Awareness Council in Mountain View, and she's going to be able to tell you all about the great services they have. And I'm actually going to put one more resource in the chat that I should have thought of before, which is what's called the SELPA 1, and it's the Special Education Local Plan Area Community Advising Committee, which is a mouthful, but basically it's where you can find other parents in Los Altos, Mountain View, and Palo Alto who are working with their schools to support their neurodivergent learners through the special education system. So thank you so much, and sorry I went a little over time.
No worries. Thank you so much, Kelly. This information is great. I think, to have information always make us powerful because either we can use it for ourselves or to share with our community or friends. And we never know, right? What can come across to our lives. So I think it was very interesting. And thank you so much. So our next speaker is Christy from Czech. She works for a nonprofit called Czech based in Mountain View, and she will be able to talk about more what her organization does.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight and spending time with us to talk about how we can support families in our community. I feel honored to follow Callie. What big shoes to come behind, but we do work together well. So my name is Christy Blewis. I am the Sites and Volunteer Manager for the Czech Family Resource Centers. The Family Resource Centers are funded through First Five California. I'm lucky enough to be an employee of CHAC. CHAC is our parent program who works in partnership with First Five California. Much of our funding comes from First Five California, and they allow us to offer all of our services completely free to those that live in our geographic region. All of our focus is on families. Early childhood education, I can't emphasize enough the importance of those first 5 years of life and how much of an impact we can make on our little ones by being with them and being present with them and empowering them and paying attention to how they might be a little bit different and how we might be able to support them. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. If we could go to the next slide, perfect. I'll start with talking about who we serve. We can work with anyone in the Northwest section of Santa Clara County. We're lucky enough to be able to have our main kind of office seat in Mountain View downtown. We're really close and walkable to many locations. We also have classrooms in other school districts. So Sunnyvale and the kind of west side of Mountain View, and also West San Jose and Cupertino. We serve all types of caregivers as long as they're parenting or caring for children in early childhood. We don't limit our services to those children. We do care for older siblings and multi-generational households with an emphasis on the importance of reaching out to the siblings and children that are in their early stages. We have an emphasis on expectant parents as well as teen parents, and helping empower parents to know the impact they can have on their kids' life and education from an early age. We also have a lot of programs geared towards service providers, so childcare providers and teachers, healthcare workers, and helping them to build social emotional learning, early childhood education, and school literacy, things like that. This is an old picture that we have here. We offer many of our classes are community-based, so we are out in the neighborhood parks where you'll see us out singing and dancing and doing activities together. And then we also have classes in our classroom locations. I'm really fortunate to be a part of a really diverse team. You'll notice I'm not in this picture. I started at CHAC February of 2020. That tells you it was right before the pandemic started. And so this picture was taken when we could still hang out and do fun stuff. So we have a lot of cultural diversity. We have multicultural ethnicities. We have folks that have immigrated here. We're fortunate enough, I am a foster and adoptive parent. So I have foster kiddos, and I was able to adopt one of my kiddos from foster care. Another one of my colleagues adopted internationally, and we have blended families, transracial families. I am a 2-mom house, and we serve families specifically with inclusion in mind and making sure we're culturally sensitive and aware. So we really focus on multilingualism, providing services in the native language of people that are in like the most need in our community. I have a lot of experience navigating the dependency system. So sometimes parents come to us because they have had an interaction with Child Protective Services and they might need some parenting support. So we can help preserve families by supporting parents in that way. Currently, our language capacity is English, Spanish, and Mandarin, but we're fortunate enough to be able to facilitate classes in other languages when we have volunteers who are willing to lead the classes with us. So we have had classes in Russian, Japanese, Vietnamese as well. And CHAC has an ongoing emphasis on DEI inclusion. And so that's something that we're always working on to make sure we can provide culturally competent and sensitive material to our families and our communities. So what do we do? This is kind of a broad overview of the things that we can offer for our families. And I welcome any questions in the chat if you're curious if we can do something, because the best part of our program is we can often find ways to meet the needs that parents are telling us they have. So all of our classes are caregiver child interactive classes, which means we don't provide childcare. Common misconception, people call asking if they can get signed up for our daycare, but we do all of our classes with the caregiver and the child present. We focus on early literacy, language development, positive or gentle parenting, community leadership, and mutual investment. So one of the things that we really love to see is after we've left a class, maybe we've had a short-term 6-week class, the folks that came to that class will continue to meet together after we've left because they've found that that class was really impactful. And they don't need us there. That's the goal. Our goal is not to be teaching what we know. It's to take what our families already know, fill that with our encouragement, investment, and then let them become the leaders of their community. And we focus on family resilience and school readiness, making sure our families are prepared to advocate for themselves when they enter into the school system. We give caregiver consultations, workshops, and seminars. So we have parenting programs that we offer at preschools and schools in the area. One thing I want to highlight, because it does work so well with Callie's presentation, was we do developmental and social emotional sensitivity screenings that can help you gauge if your child is developing appropriately for their age. And those assessments can be taken to your pediatrician if you have any questions. And so that's what Callie was talking about with noticing differences early on and being able to adjust what we might be offering to our kiddos really early so they can become resilient and develop the skills that they need to address those differences. So all of those things are offered completely free of charge. We're so fortunate to be able to meet the needs of our community that way. Community worker services. Our community workers are also called family engagement specialists. We work with connecting families to resources in our community. We can do a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that we can't do, but there is not a lot that I can't figure out how to get for you from somebody else. And so we really specialize in figuring out the how, the why, the where, if we can't do it. So I don't like to give a no. I like to give an I don't know, and I'm going to find out for you. We can help families apply for Medi-Cal. We have a wonderful volunteer program where we have students that are interning from San Jose State, retired school teachers, librarians, community members, families that have been through our services before who come back and work with us. It's really awesome. I feel really fortunate to be a part of that program. We can skip, yeah, there we go. And this is just a quick overview. We had to shift recently, move everything over to Zoom because we were not getting to meet in person. We've just started to meet in person again, but this is a little picture of what our Zoom classes might have looked like. It looks chaotic because it was. Have you ever tried to have a Zoom with 12 toddlers? It's very interesting, but we did it and we were successful. It was fun. I'm Ready for Kindergarten is a class that models like a traditional kindergarten class, and they goes year long. The kids stay for the whole year and really build their skills up to entering kindergarten. It's meant for mostly families that don't have access to preschool. As you know, that's changing soon, but before that was really a barrier. Play and Learn is a free class that comes, it's a drop-in style class and is less structured than an I'm Ready for Kindergarten class. And then we have art and music enrichment. So we have a bilingual art studio where we teach in English and in Spanish. Tunes on Tuesday at Mercy Bush Park. It's outside. I wish I had put a new photo up. We are up to 40 to 50 families coming every week, throwing some blankets down in some grass, singing together. It's amazing. And then we have story time in the kitchen where we focus on a lot of our parents maybe don't read or write yet. And so we focus on showing the parents how they can still teach their kiddos and encourage literacy, even if that's something that's not accessible to them. So how cooking, counting, billboards, telling a story as you're reading a book, even if you can't follow along with the written words, all of those ways, parents are the first teacher, no matter what their skill sets are, and building that confidence. We focus on social emotional health, and I know we're running low on time, so I'll just cruise through this pretty quickly. I'm sure these slides can be made available to you if you have any other questions, but I focus on trauma-informed care. And so we provide a support group for parents that are trying to care for high needs kiddos. We have a support group for self-care and building resilience in parents, Mothers and Babies, which is a co-granted program that focuses on postpartum depression. Cafecito is for parents to get together. It's always in Spanish, and it provides parental support, and then the community is mutually invested in one another. We provide childcare provider coaching. So we have some really cool programs where childcare providers, daycare providers can get funds for learning with us. And if they stick with us for a program, for the length of the program, we can give them grants and money and support and supplies. It's really awesome. And we also, so I'm a employee of CHAC, but I'm not a clinician. I don't have technical mental health training, but we provide a success team and wraparound support for our families. Many families come to us with a need, and we can meet part of that need, and then we get to like carry them and hand them off to CHAC and get them mental health support as well, which is such a gift to be able to provide. And then this is what we do, what the family engagement coordinators do. We can do referrals, develop relationships between the participants, the families that are participating, the volunteers, and it's just a process of cultivating a trusting relationship. The families need to know that they can tell you what's going on and that you can help meet that need. So that's everything that we do is relationship based. Everything that we do is listening and responding and supporting. And so yeah, that's our goal, is just to be with families and help build our community by supporting the people that live near us. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to me, these are ways that you can reach us, ways that you can find out about our programs. We have really cool like farm trips that you can go on and come pet some emotional support animals and come sing some songs with us in a park. I would love to see you guys around. So thanks for taking the time to listen, and I feel so honored to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Christy. It is beautiful, all the work that you do. I work for CSA, for those that they don't know. So also we serve the community in different way, but you know, to be with people like Callie, Christy, Victoria, Crystal, Fabian, which are my team, it's very nice, you know, because we are doing this for the community at the end of the day. So we want to give the resources available, and also for us, it's just very valuable, you know, that we can know this information. And if you want to volunteer or you want to pass out this information to your family or friends, it will be awesome. So thank you so much again. And we truly appreciate that you are joining us tonight in this session, and hopefully you are finding the content very valuable to you. And before we go to the breakout rooms, we would like to hear a little bit more about the feedback that you have on this event. And I will welcome Crystal.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jimena. Again, yeah, huge shout out and thank you to all the speakers. Just so grateful for all of the amazing resources that are literally at our fingertips. that I learned a ton, and I took some notes as well. So I'll be looking at the resources afterwards. So thank you. As Jimena said, we'd love to hear your feedback on whether or not this event was helpful. So if you could take a quick minute or two to just share your feedback, we'll give you time and space to do that now. And then what we'll do is we'll pivot in a minute over to our breakout rooms so that you all can continue to build community. But before anyone hops off, if you're able to share feedback, that'd be greatly appreciated.
I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Sure, go for it, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all three speakers. I kind of had a connection with all three. The first one, you know, I had a 17.5-hour neurosurgery that I almost didn't survive. And the John Kabat-Zinn 8-week mindfulness medicine, mindfulness-based stress reduction class probably was the biggest change in my life. If you look at inflection points and the whole concept of mindfulness and meditation as being important. The second speaker, our son was highly dyslexic. He would have been eaten alive in a public school. Luckily, we had the financial resources to let my wife homeschool him. I've never seen anybody so creative and brilliant, and he's now a robotics engineer for a high-tech company. So the work you're doing so these children don't get buried, that can thrive in their skills, I think is just totally essentially important. And the third speaker, I'll just say that I'm just continually amazed of how affluent Mountain View is, but yet how much need is out there. So just my hats off to you, because if there's one thing I heard tonight that I really agree with, is that first 5 years of being so important to the entire life of a child. So that early support is just so important. So my hat's off to all three of you. And sorry I rambled, but I just felt a need to say that you guys rock.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate the live feedback. And I think at this point, for anyone who wants to continue to stay on, what we're going to do is we're going to pivot into some breakout rooms. And we'll have one of our speakers as well as one of either Jimena or Fabian in each of the breakout rooms to guide the content. And I know we're almost at time, but it's really brief, just any learnings that you had, and then also an opportunity for you to connect. So whether you want to connect on LinkedIn, got to do a LinkedIn plug there, or if you want to connect via email, exchange phone numbers, etc., so you can continue to build your community beyond this event. That's the purpose of these breakout rooms. So I'll go ahead on the back end and connect you all. And then if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.